For your reference, it's now 12 o'clock. I am starting to record this session. Hopefully everybody is presentable and ready to become famous online. I see a few students here, and I'm sharing my screen. One of the things I'm sharing my screen with is I want you to know everyone can always share information and be social in social media and Facebook. And we have created some social media Facebook pages for our class. But I want you to notice this. In a different group, some other students created an award. They gave an award for the best research paper. They gave another award for the best social media video and presentation. They gave another award for the best interaction with companies and communications. And what this is just very good students, proactive students, are seeing that for them to be successful and get a job, they need to show on their resume in any culture that they're valuable. And just a university degree and high marks is not enough nowadays. So having interaction with work definitely helps, but also winning awards helps. So think creatively. You can make an award. I can sign it just like I did here, and you can win this award, put it on your resume and say these are ideas that you can work with. That's just one thing you can take a look at. I wanted to also identify that in our website for the university is slowly opening the CTL system to the foreign professors, me, and we have started to put in some of the files, and we're going to be using some of the files that are in CTL. But the most important information, the most important file to use for our class is this online Excel file. And so that's what we're going through today. We have some students that have shared files in the past. And I want to remind you all that the more proactive you are in international communications, usually the better. In Korea, most students wait quietly, and they think that being quiet is a sign of respect. They think it's polite. They think it is loyal to sit and wait to work for your boss. But internationally, you should recognize your equal, and you should start showing results, start showing your contributions. And so this is an article that was already written by a student talking about Hyundai's hierarchical system as a global company and its barriers to working in Canada and in China and in Korea. So this is one type of example that students can present this overall. That's great to see. The other thing, let me just make sure everybody can see that and get copies to that. The other thing that we're looking at is we have a special observer in our class. I hope he doesn't mind. If you do mind, please shake your head, or I can see some of the details related to when you're moving. We have Professor Jen Graff, which is a professor in Denmark. And everybody has identified that Denmark is one of the most distinctly different countries in the world from Korea. And while I'm Canadian culture is different, but Denmark is almost the most extreme difference. So he's here being a visiting professor with us today. There's information we can talk about later about his background, his work experience. He also has a presentation here talking about, where is it here? Cross-cultural business behavior, some comments. You might be able to help you guys when we go forward in class discussions. But for today, he's here. You can see him in the videos. We may get some comments from him, but he's going to be just observing you guys at the beginning for now. Whenever you like, he can try to jump in. So I am showing that not only one student in the past has shared an article that he already wrote, but another student shared an article related to the textbook. So this is what I'm looking for. In Korea, Korean culture requires students to be obedient to professors, maybe submissive to professors, require that you understand there's a hierarchy, and Korea says the professor's close to the top of the hierarchy and students are close to the bottom of the hierarchy. But for cross-cultural communications, you must realize that outside of Korea, you have to interact in a different way to work effectively, to be appreciated, to be respected. Sometimes the Korean way of being quiet might be considered as rude in other cultures. For example, in many countries, when somebody asks a question to a group, if nobody answers, if nobody comments, some people think that's rude. But in Korea, it's normal. So you need to understand that. And I have created points, and I'm giving points to each student based on your participation and contributions. So I showed how one student shares an article that they wrote. Here is I'm going to zoom in to this now. Another student has shared this information, and what it's showing is the idea of week 4, chapter 4 in our textbook is talking about cultural synergy. So it is defining from a student the cooperation of organizations or individuals to produce a combined effect greater than the sum of their separate parts. That is synergy. So cultural synergy is you need to learn what is the best parts of your culture, what is the best parts of a different culture, understand everybody is born only knowing one, and then you get a little bit of education and you become ethnocentric. You know there is different culture, but you don't appreciate the benefits of the other culture. Because you know a lot of your own culture, you value your culture, and you don't know the other culture, so you think your culture is better than others. But, for example, in India, there's 1.3, 1.4 billion people doing something in the Indian way. Even though we might not understand it, we must respect it because there's only 50 million people doing things in the Korean way and 1.34 billion people doing things in the Indian way or Chinese way. So, try to find cultural synergy, using more than one cultural mindset to come to a better solution. Avoid the group think. Everybody in Korea may be doing things in a certain way. You need to get past that, understand the global workplace, the global way to communicate has many different ways. You need to get into that and learn the local, global way, the globalization as they're talking about. Then they talk about a problem, cultural invisibility and blindness. Sometimes it's hard to see how culture affects behavior in business. Most people think only of themselves. Most people think only about what your mom, your dad, or your teacher taught you in your home country. And they forget that there's many other moms on the other side of the world teaching very good things, but they may be different than what you know. And it doesn't mean just because you don't know it, just because you think it's strange or you don't understand it, it doesn't mean the other mom is bad or the other teacher is bad. It just means you don't understand it. And so people think other people are similar to yourself. You think you have common sense, but that actually doesn't exist in some ways. People on the other side of the planet, they have a different common sense. So when you project what you think is normal and what you think is common, you're actually making a mistake. And Americans are actually trained to ignore these things. And Americans are trained, look at Donald Trump. Sorry, delete that. Never think of Donald Trump. Never look at Donald Trump. He's an example of what not to be, in my personal opinion. But he ignores and discourages diversity. And it's actually hurting the United States. It's deadly in many ways to do that. You should learn what are the good things about China and how have they been able to have a population of over 1 billion and still control it much, much better than supposedly the advanced country of the United States. So there are good things to learn, though. The idea of equal employment laws, they ban discrimination or discrimination on sex or race or religion. Cross-cultural communications. This morning I had a class talking about human resource management, and students were talking about making their own resume to apply for a job, and they need to realize that in some countries you're not allowed to show your picture. Even if you're a beautiful, handsome person, some countries you're not allowed to show a photo, you're not allowed to show your age, you're not allowed to show where you live. There are laws against that in some areas. Next, there's quotas, examples of minorities getting hired or fired. Other than that, this student has identified one of the most important points that they read in the book is page 112. So let's take a look. What is this book? We know that this is the book that I have started to scan and I've shared with some students. And on page 102 or 78 of my scan, figure 4.2, chapter 4, week 1 we do week 1, chapter 1, week 2 we do chapter 2, we keep going through. This is week 4, so chapter 4, it's talking about creating cultural synergy. And there's a way to do it. Since most people don't know how, you're born parochial, you get a little bit of education, and you know there's a different way, but you think you don't know it, you don't understand it, so it must be strange or bad. So how do you overcome it? And so step 1 is you must describe the situation. What is the situation from your cultural perspective? And very difficultly, try to describe the situation from the other person's cultural perspective. Maybe we have 2 microphones working at the same time, but Professor...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Great, success. Whoa.
Okay, I'm on my iPad. So I will continue on my iPad, okay?
Would you like to say hello to the class so people know who is leading us today?
Yes, I will, yeah. I can't see class pictures, but maybe
we can see you. And if you just go ahead and start talking, I can show your resume if you want. I can show your PPT of your background, or I can show your PPT of cultural details. What would you like me to show to the students? The students and I, we can see.
Just my PowerPoints about cross-cultural business behavior. So, yeah, this one.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Do you want me to talk about those PowerPoints?
It's up to you. You are the VIP, and in the Canadian culture, I believe it's polite to introduce the guests. So in Canadian culture, we let the guest basically be the boss. We're supposed to make you feel very comfortable at home, give you access to drinks and food, and take the nice chairs and stuff. But unfortunately, we're online with a new technology, so we're torturing you instead. Whatever you like.
Okay, I can take over for a while, and then maybe you can stop me when appropriate. So the sound goes through well, okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I have muted the sound on my computer screen, and I can see the students there. So that I think in combination it will go fine. It will work fine. Okay.
references, we see the top of your glasses and your hair, but we don't see much of your nose or the bottom of your face, just for your reference.
Okay.
There we go.
It's because of the iPad. But I can know if you can hear me, and I think it will be okay. Just organize myself a little better. Yes, okay. I have made this small PowerPoint about cross-cultural business behavior, and if you go to this slide here, it goes that in international business there is two iron rules of international business. Two iron rules. One, in international business, the seller adapts to the buyer. That is very important. The seller adapts to the buyer, and that is basically because there are more supply than demand. So therefore, seller adapts to the buyer. And you can also, the iron rule number 2 is that the visitor is expected to observe local customs. So talking about synergy, I think this last iron rule is the important one. The visitor is expected to observe local customs. So that is why we are trained in cross-cultural business behavior, because a person who is not trained, he does not know what to look for and how to handle cultural differences. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Can I do it myself? No. Yeah, yes, there we are. So the most important patterns of cross-cultural business behavior is that there are two opposed focus, the deal focus and the relationship focus. And we also talk about informal or egalitarian versus hierarchical cultures, formal cultures. Rigid time, monochronic versus fluid time, polychronic cultures, and those cultures that are emotionally expressive versus emotionally reserved cultures. So a Korean culture is a relationship-focused culture, very much so, and it's also very hierarchical. I think you agree with that. About time, I think that you are monochronic. In business, I think you are monochronic. It means that you worship time. You have to meet up on time. It's important business. In business matters. And about emotionally expressiveness, I think you are a rather reserved culture. Next, please.
Okay.
So the problem comes when you are making a contract. How can you make a contract? Can you make a business discussion right away, or or do you have to be introduced by others? And that is the indirect approach. If you take a Canadian, I think you can go directly to discussing the contract, whereas in an indirect culture, in a reserved culture, you have to use an indirect approach. That means that you have to be introduced by somebody else. Best would be a high rank person, and so you have to pull in Guangxi, so who you know, and involve them, and so they can introduce you, because otherwise you are a stranger, and Koreans doesn't deal with strangers.
I think those are very interesting points. I hope you don't mind if I jump in every once in a while, or if you want, I can wait until you're finished. But what you're talking about, I think is very interesting, especially with today, the idea of in Korea, although China is where Guangxi came from, Korea thrives on Guangxi and relationships, and the whole idea of focused relationships or deal focused relationships is interesting. Like today, my Canadian culture, I introduced related to you and the students. And in my experience in Korea, I think the Korean students are focused on the relationship focus.
Yes.
But we're interested in maybe also the Danish, the Denmark view. You've jumped in, and you're obviously very senior. You're a professor and a government officer. You are the top of the top for everything that we're talking about. And yet, you have been very modest and humble, and I didn't go through your resume and I didn't show that to the group, but you just go ahead and talk in class and teach a topic, share your experiences like you're just a simple, regular guy, but you're not. Is it okay if I keep interrupting like that, or would you like me to wait until you finished your presentation?
No, it's nice to drop in so we can share examples, and you can validate what I'm saying, or opposite. So that is
How about
fine.
I ask Miss Han Hei Sol, I see you're looking at us. Maybe you're starting to fall asleep because I talk too much. I don't know.
No,
But
I didn't sleep.
you saw me, soon as we started the class, I tried to do the Korean thing and introduce our guest. I think that's the Korean way. It's also similar in Canada. I should introduce the guest, offer him a drink, offer him something before we talk about business, before we talk about class, before we start trying to negotiate money or details, especially if the visitor is super high and VIP important, like Dr. Graf. But how would you describe, what is the Korean way to meet him? How do you interact in Korea? What is the Korean thing to do if you meet another person, especially an older, very experienced VIP?
Do you mean such as how can you invite them?
Sure. We have a class meeting. We have a company meeting. What are we supposed to do? How do we start the company meeting? Where do they sit in the room? Any details? What are you aware of as far as the Korean ways?
In Korean way to invite some VIP such as like that. Firstly, to contact by email like them, and then if the VIP comes and introduce the host introduce who is them and offer some drinks like that, and VIP give a lecture and leading the Q&A session like that, and then finish.
Is this the way to do it? I have drinks, you don't. I have coffee, you don't. I think that's not what you're talking about, right? Anything else?
Yeah.
What about Han Xiang? Can you also add to that? What do you think is the Korean culture when we interact with somebody else?
I think whenever Korean meet like very VIP guests, we need to very polite. We need to take care of what we are saying to them. And I think we also need to really take care of even questioning. I think
Okay.
there are, we need to avoid that can annoy the VIP guest, I think.
So I shouldn't do this.
May I comment?
But I think there's a difference. If you meet a person in Korea, if he is invited, of course you are polite to him, very polite, and more polite than we are in Denmark. But for the person to be invited and invited at all, there we have a problem, because if I ask to do a guest lecture at your university, probably I will not be allowed, because they don't know me. So I have to be introduced by Professor Watts, for example. So it hangs on me, it hangs on him if I'm good enough. So, and the same if you are in business, if you are going to sell something, because they don't know your company, your company has to be introduced to a Korean, because otherwise they will not deal with him. Otherwise, in an American culture, they are much more open and much more direct and much more deal focused. They're looking at the deal. What do we have to offer? And they're looking at this offer, and then they can say yes or no, nearly on the spot, right? Never so we are Korean. You have to trust the person before you deal with him. Does it make sense? Because
Yes.
a person you don't know is a stranger, and you don't deal with strangers. You don't make business with strangers. You make business with people you know, or people you have become acquainted with. Am I right, students?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
maybe you can express it a little bit better, Dr. Watts.
no, that I can actually provide facts. Korea is famous because a few years ago, Korea was very poor and most people didn't know about Korea, but it grew to become one of the most developed countries in the world. It's very famous now. Almost everybody knows of Samsung and Hyundai, LG, many companies. But it's newly developed. And even though the university that we are at, Kim Young University, is very well respected and famous around the world, this university has some traditional culture, traditional features. And you students also, although you're young and you're modern, you were born with a cell phone in your ear or MP3 player and video games all the time, you still are conservative. A lot of people don't talk as much, and you might not be comfortable when you're talking to new people as much as somebody like Donald Trump. He will say anything, whether it's true or not, in front of anybody. He doesn't really care. And so how does that work in Korea? This university has hiring practices that are pretty strict, pretty formal. They've obviously hired me, but although that Professor Jen Graff is much more accomplished than me, and he's a good professor and a government officer for the Ministry of Education in Denmark, one of the world's most respected cultural focused countries. The university is saying that for him to work here, he has to go through, or even talk here, they were saying the normal way is for him to apply through the regular HR department, and it takes a long time. So it's better if I, as an insider, take full responsibility for him and bring him into the class. So even though he can probably teach better than me, for him to offer a lecture, it's easier for me to offer the lecture in my name and just he show up and teach. So obviously when we're talking about deal focus versus relationship focus, this slide on Professor his PowerPoint Korea is super, super relationship focused. Another example of that is when I used to be interviewing students and accepting new students that were applying to my university before. One of the very first questions the president of the university would ask the student is, who's your mother and father? What is your family? Does your family have connections to our university? Does your family live in an area where the powerful families live? And he was checking, what is your relation? Are you the high power high power family? Or are you from a regular family? Are you an insider or an outsider? And all of that stuff is discussed usually informally, like social chit chat, but there's a lot of meaning behind it. And when you're young, you might not notice these things, but as you get older, like me, and you get a lot more experience, you will see. When I first came to Korea, there was an unwritten rule about eyeglasses. The simple idea of eyeglasses. Most glasses, they weren't really just like this. There was either a round glass or square glasses. And some people said that the powerful people had to use this type of glass, and the junior level people either hide their glasses or they have to have like round glasses. So small things like that you might not understand. Another time I was working for a company, and the company paid salaries very well, but the executives in the company were so focused on the relationship and the image of the relationship that you were not allowed to buy any car you wanted. If the president of the car just had a nice Hyundai Sonata or a Granger, then the office manager or the office assistant or a secretary was not allowed to drive around in the same type of car. So the secretary was not allowed to drive around in a Hyundai Sonata. Not until the president got the university to buy them like a very fancy limousine, like an Equus. And then the office staff can raise their car level. So it's just an example. Another example in Korea, people usually don't talk very much. They allow the professor to talk. But in Canada, as a professor and a consultant, I talk way too much. I want you students to talk more. What about Yi Charin? Any comments from you or questions for anyone?
About what you just talked about, or?
Yes, and yes. Overall, we're focused this week on cultural synergy. That's the normal class. And normally in Korea, you follow step 1, step 2, step 3. We're supposed to do chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. Today's normally chapter 4, but we have a new opportunity to deal with this great new guest. So I allow you guys to ask any questions and talk about different things. The chapter is talking about how can you get synergy? How can you get cultural synergy? Korea has one way of doing things. Canada has a different way of doing things. The Canadian way might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable with me allowing you to talk about anything and share anything, but it's getting you used to working with other cultures. And now we have somebody from almost the opposite culture, more different than Canada. Somebody in Denmark. Do you know how to get synergy and interact best if you want Danish people to like you or respect you or do business with you?
I would say being proactive is the most important in like in I don't know, doing business with cross-cultural like aspect. I think it is really kind of, we should not, like us Koreans should not be really limited to what we are used to, but rather, force ourselves, although it is difficult, we need to force ourselves to be more proactive. And yeah, that's just my thought.
Okay. Lee Sung-hak
Yeah.
or Na Yu-jun or Chae Sung-yeon, Hongmin, any of you have any other comments? Do you want to listen to Miss Lee, do you want to try to be proactive and develop a relationship with the VIP today?
Xiang, do you have this thing here?
Developing cultural awareness, yes.
Yeah, do we have that slide? Yes. Because my experience with students is that if you have a kind approach and a friendly approach, students will open up, and we have a relaxed relationship, and then you will be open and not quiet. So you will participate. Also, Koreans, you can make them to participate in this way, I think. And so the best recommendation you can come up with is that when you are in a different country than your own, you should just behave naturally. There is a saying, to be a Rome, do as a Romans, but that is not true, in fact. The best way to behave is to be natural. But also, and if you have this recipe here, the slide, developing cultural awareness, communicate, respect, and convey verbally and non-verbally a positive regard and sincere interest in people and their culture. So that's very important. And tolerate ambiguity and cope with cultural differences and frustration that frequently develops when things are different and circumstances change. Yes, and display empathy by understanding other people's needs and differences from their point of view. As you, maybe you don't know, but I have been at a university in Korea for 3 years, Musong University, the business school, Solbridge International School of Business. And I have met many of you students, besides from other Asian regions. And of course, I think that many of Koreans, they behave in a strange way. They put attention to things that I wouldn't put attention to. But of course, you're not stupid, and you are not, you are okay because you do it in a cultural context that is familiar with you, but that is strange to me. And that will be the same if you came to Denmark. You would think that we behaved in a different way, put attention on different things. But so we should remain non-judgmental about the behavior of others, particularly with reference to their own value standards, because we have to recognize and control the self-reference criteria, SRC, self-reference criterion, that is that one should recognize their own culture and values as an influence of their perceptions, relations, and judgment in a situation. So you always look at the world and the environment with your own glasses. Your glasses are different from mine because you have a cultural background that is different from mine. So you eat differently, you dress differently, you might have a different humor, and so on. So therefore, for me, you are different, but it's okay because it's based on your culture, and the same way I should be okay for you if you remain non-judgmental about the peculiarities of me, because I'm just a Dane, and we used to do it the way that I show to you. Of course, there are personal differences. This factor is always there, personal differences, but we are very much influenced by our culture. You are, I am. Sometimes, you know, if things go wrong, and laugh things off. A sense of humor helps with frustration levels, and things do not work as planned. And maybe Koreans are not especially good at laughing things off, because, as Professor Watts says, that you are rather traditional and very rooted in your culture. But of course, things change over time, and you are young, and things have changed. I left Korea in 2012, and now we write 2020, and I think if I go to Korea today, things have changed a lot.
Yes, things are changing super fast here. I understand that in Korea, you're supposed to maintain things a lot. That's a popular thing in Korea. At the same time, the head of Samsung says he changes everything except your family. You're always supposed to change things according to the head of Samsung. So following the head of Samsung, I want to change our class right now. You know that you get most marks for doing a research project. You get some marks for participating in a weekly presentation. You get more marks just for contributing, for talking in class, sharing details in class. And so now I'm going to clarify. I'm going to give you more marks if you listen to Professor Graf and help me laugh things off. If my teaching is so terrible, help make a joke of it. Make sure that the class is funny, and hopefully you can introduce the Korean humor, since I might not have any humor, and make the overall situation more enjoyable. So anybody that adds a joke or makes educational contribution to the class, feel free to do the Canadian thing. You're allowed to, I am allowed to make fun of myself. I'm allowed to insult myself. I will allow you to make fun of me if you want. It's definitely not normal in Korea, but you can do it with me. Anyway, make jokes, as it says, learn how to laugh things off. That will help overcome cultural barriers, but realize that jokes are very hard. Understanding the culture, foreign culture, sometimes understanding a different religion. Like I interacted, I've had some meetings recently with a bunch of people in India and Nepal and Sri Lanka. And I start joking about how, wow, our meeting's going well, but it would go a lot better if I had a bunch of whiskey in my coffee. And I forgot that many of them don't drink alcohol. They think drinking alcohol is bad. So I just tried to make a joke, but I indirectly insulted some of them. Anyway, so try is good.
But anyway, you should try to be relaxed about things. So that is also very important. Don't take things too seriously. And so, you know, don't believe that professors know everything. They don't. So, and your opinion is good, and you should always try test your opinion in class. So if students come up with opinions, how odd they may be, it's always good, because it opens up for discussions, and that is what it's all about. We have to discuss things, and your opinion is just as good as mine. But so my job is to put your opinions in a theoretical framework. So that's what I'm there for, because.
Right. If I can add to that, I want to ask, what about Lee Soo-hyun in your red t-shirt today? Yes. can you tell me what is a Korean professor's natural style? Professor Graf and we both invited you to make jokes in class. I invited you to make jokes about me, and Professor Graf was saying, we are all equal, you can share your comments. So tell me, would a Korean professor do the same?
I don't think so. They never, maybe,
Yeah.
never allowed to make fun of them. Usually, just like they usually talk them themselves.
Yeah. So when I was in Korea, I always dressed casually, and today I know it was too casually, because Koreans, or if there were Asian professors, they always dressed very formally, and I think that you expect that.
Do you
Because
guys care?
otherwise
What about Na Yu Jung or Che Sung Yeon, Jung Yu Jin? Do you care that I have a suit and tie on today? Does it make a difference? Honestly, and even subconsciously in the back of your mind, does it make a difference if I come to class wearing a t-shirt and shorts or a suit and tie? How do you feel? What do you think is the Korean cultural acceptance?
I don't think it matters that much because it's Zoom class, since we are like wearing comfortable.
yeah. So, but we have different styles, and what I realized in Korea also, when we had lunchtime, we went to the eating room or the canteen. Students were very particular about food. So the many Asian countries, the Thais were particular, the Indians were particular. Especially the Thais, I think they could nearly cancel the enrollment and go home of food reasons, because they had to have their own food. They wouldn't accept what was served in the canteen. For me, it didn't make a big thing. So when I came to Korea, I had to eat kimchi. It was quite a test, but after some time, I liked it. So we just have to be relaxed about cultural differences. But of course, when you are in a business situation and you are to start a business relationship, you have to be very aware of the culture you are dealing with, because otherwise, so you see, the customer is king. The customer is king, and you have to look at this in that way. So you have, as a seller, to adjust to the buyer, because the buyer is the king. Why is it so? Yeah, because the buyer can go somewhere else to buy his stuff. So you are in competition with other companies, and the company that can best adapt to that culture very often will get the order.
Professor Graf, would you be able to help Koreans understand what they should be doing, or what normal people in Denmark would be doing in an introduction or in a class? What do they think about equality? For example, I think there's a chance these students hear you say we should be good, we should be relaxed, we should try, but maybe in Lee Sung-hak's mind, he's relaxed and he's trying and he's doing what you're saying. But in my mind, because he's being quiet, maybe he's not. Is it possible that people in Denmark might think he's rude if he's quiet?
I think we will, of course, we have to distinguish between inward behaving and extra, what is it called, external behavior. Do you know what I'm meaning? In inward reserved, some people are quiet by nature, and you have to wait for some time until you realize that this student is not neither stupid nor arrogant. He's just inward looking, and so after some time he gets the respect he deserves. You know, in classes some are very outward behaving, and at first time in class you think that the outward behaving students are the best, but things change when you learn students to know, and know that some students just are reserved by nature.
Okay, can one student here propose, if you are doing business in Denmark or in Canada, what is an example of things that you would do there that you don't normally do in Korea?
May I volunteer?
Yes, you may.
I would probably suggest things to make business better. Where in Korea, I would just have to follow the rules and stay quiet until my superior tells me what to do. But in the Western countries, I would rather suggest what it could be, the things that could be better for successful business.
Absolutely. So, Lee Soo-hyun, Sung-ak Lee, Yoon Jung-na, Sung-ha Cho, all of the rest of the students, try to take note of that, and every class, make sure you make a suggestion, at least one suggestion. Maybe your suggestion is, hey, Professor Watts, can you be quiet? It might be better if you suggest people look at a journal article you found, but because we're equal, I personally would respect and maybe give you points if you just suggest I shut up or be quiet. Did I see Kim Min-jae? Did you put your hand up a little bit? Is there something you're trying to say? No? I can't even encourage people to talk. What about Chae Sung-yeon? Any comments from you? Big eyes? No, not me. I can't talk.
Yeah. Well,
I think this class is good enough. I can barely have a suggestion.
Okay, but my point is, forget what I am saying. Forget the teacher for a minute. I'm talking about how you need to develop with cross-cultural communications management. If you study and read a book, that doesn't mean you understand it. By living as the book says to live, you actually learn more. So what I'm telling you to do is, the Korean thing is to be quiet and listen to a professor. But you cannot learn well if you only do that. You should practice talking. So even though you think you don't have suggestions, can you agree that Donald Trump's suggestions are terrible and sometimes dangerous, but he still makes those suggestions? You should learn, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. You should learn from Donald Trump and practice giving suggestions, just so that you get more comfortable doing it. So that people in Denmark or United States will more easily accept you and you get familiar with it. Han Hazel, do you have any suggestions you want to make? No? I see
Suggestion
you getting
class
excited.
to you.
Any suggestion possible. I'm providing you with an opportunity to do anything so that Professor Graf might recognize who you are.
Now I'm satisfied with the class, so I don't have any suggestions.
The
Maybe.
Korean style. I'm okay. 알겠습니다. 교수님. 좋습니다. Practice talking more.
Yeah. So you are,
Professor,
because, please go on.
oh, yeah, may I have give a suggestion for the class? So maybe students might unfamiliar with this kind of system, so that I think having more student group debate during the class can be reduce the pressure from like this kind of unfamiliar system.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with you. Debate is a good thing. But you see, you come from a very hierarchical culture, and I come from a very egalitarian culture. So I can oppose my boss, and I can do it openly. I shouldn't be rude, of course, but I can have different opinion than him, and I can express it openly. You can't do that in your culture. So you're trained to be quiet, and you are trained to obey your superior, even if you don't agree with him. And
Yes.
so, of course, in a formal meeting, you shouldn't go too much against your boss, of course. But in daily circumstances, when you are in university or you are in a company, you should discuss and disagree with your company bosses, because otherwise the company doesn't move on. It doesn't develop.
Absolutely. And
yeah.
So following what you said, Ms. Ha, I, as the professor in Korea, can very easily put you into a group and tell you, you have to debate. But that's Korean. That's not international culture. What I'm asking you to do is find it in yourself, be proactive yourself to make a suggestion without your boss asking you. Let me give you an example to encourage this. I know it's hard for you to make just casual suggestions. And so I give you rewards. I give you class points for doing it. In the past, the best class I ever had in Korea was a class where the students kicked me out of class. Everybody loved the topic so much that they started discussing it and sharing ideas and how to manage it. And I was saying, well, what about this? What about this? And they were saying, get out, go outside, wait outside, go have a coffee, come back in 15 minutes. Because they wanted to debate with me. And that was the best class I've ever had in Korea that I got kicked out of by the students. So I want you, don't just wait for me to tell you to debate, start making your own suggestion. Because when you go to Canada or US or Denmark, they will probably expect it.
Yes, yes, we will. That's our system, so to say. But and I agree with Professor Watts that you have to test your opinions and come up with your ideas, and also what you don't understand. Just ask and ask the professor to clear it out for you. It's not to show that you're ignorant or anything else. It's just showing that you are eager to learn and you like to discuss things. And that is very important in your learning, because otherwise you wouldn't learn that much. Because as Professor Watts said earlier, one thing is to read the textbook, another thing is to understand it. And of course, at the beginning, it is difficult to understand. So we know that. So just be open with your with what you don't understand. So let it come up and let us discuss it, and let the professor describe it in another way. So that is important. And that is why I say be relaxed about things, but because we know who you are, we know that you are students, you know that you are not trained in those things. And you know, in everything we do, if you're not, we are stupid in doing things the first time, and you know, but after some time we become more familiar with it. And the same way you should be familiar with the theory. We know that you are not familiar at the beginning, so just be honest about that you are something you don't know. So that is how you behave, I think.
So if I understand what Professor Jen Graff is saying, is he's saying that accept that we are all equal, accept that we are learning, accept that even if you try and make a mistake, that's okay. But is it? In Korea, what is the Korean value? Chae Sungyeon or Lee Seung-hak, do you feel okay if you try and make a mistake in front of class?
Sometimes
Hell no.
sometimes it's okay, but sometimes it doesn't. Like, cause yeah, it depends on the people. I think. Like, cause I feel like I'm okay. Cause
you're okay making mistakes.
Sometimes, yeah, but like if I like made a big mistake, then it's not okay. But if it's a little mistake, then it's okay. So it depends on like what mistakes we have had. Yeah.
Okay.
For me, it's not, because it's embarrassing and it can be like rude. I mean, I can be considered as a rude.
Behind the hood and a mask because you don't want to be embarrassed if you make a mistake. Maybe people won't know who you are.
Maybe.
So that was I talked about earlier. People are in different groups. Some are introvert and some are extrovert. So it's difficult to make an introvert person extrovert. That we should respect. But so that's an introvert person. If you are relaxed as a professor and make a good climate in the class, even the introvert should come up, should be more relaxed and participate in discussions and making opinions. That is what it's all about. Make opinions. Don't believe that you are stupid. You are not. You are just beginners in the field.
Can you, I really hope the students here understand and accept what he's saying. But I think I have seen signs in the past, maybe the signs I've seen, maybe the research I've observed, maybe it's wrong. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples in Korea and outside of Korea. For example, everybody knows Tesla and Elon Musk. Elon Musk says that he rewards people for making mistakes. Google company wants people to spend 20% of their time or one day a week trying new things, even making mistakes. But I have been in Korea for a while and I have Korean kids here, and I've seen young kids make a simple mistake on their homework and the teacher beat them, gave them bruises. Chae Sungyeon, are you trying to say something or just stretching? No. So have any of you been hit by a teacher for making a mistake on homework or a mistake in class or being late or not participating properly in something the teacher says?
Yes.
Have any of you? Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my
That's
God!
what
Do I
was
see
a
Korea is
everybody
like
in
this,
class?
first
Professor.
The
experience.
first time everybody talks, and yes, the teacher beat my ass. Are you telling me that? So that is normal for you, but it is illegal in Canada. Professor Graf, is it illegal, or does it happen sometimes, but do they regret it in Denmark? How often do you hear a story of, when was the last time you beat your student?
I've never beaten them, and of course it's illegal. No, we are far away from that.
But don't misunderstand. Everybody in class here, I think you know that it is illegal in Korea. There are laws in Korea that says teachers are not allowed to use corporal punishment, but it still happens a lot. I've seen kids hit so much they get bruises because they had simple mistakes on their homework, and the family, one like the father wanted to go in and fight with the teacher, but the mother and the rest of the Korean family says, no, that's the Korean way, don't make a problem, just it's going to get better later. So when we say you need to try, you are thinking, yeah, we need to try, but only I will try if I know the perfect answer. Otherwise, I think I might get hit. But that's not the way it is outside of Korea in many countries. Oh, maybe some. My point is, you can get rewards. You can, outside of Korean culture, a lot of countries, you get success by trying things and making mistakes, learning from mistakes, including in this class. Wow, first time I ever saw all students start talking at once. How can I do that again?
But of course, now you shouldn't believe that we think bad about Korean culture in any way, but just try to enforce learning. If you look at, because we know that you are studying very hard and for many hours, and in Denmark it's not so. And the students in Denmark can be too relaxed, and that's not good either.
Oh my gosh, you got to talk more about that. How many hours does a student in Korea study or focus on books? And how many hours do you think I studied on books in Canada? Or how many hours do students study on books, reading books in Denmark? Do you guys know those answers?
I don't know the answers, but I
Korean?
think the Koreans are double of that in Denmark.
I think for Korean, we need to stay in the school like around more than 10 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when
so-
we are like in high school.
13 hours. 13 hours.
Isamak says he stays studying books 30 hours every day.
13, Professor.
13. What, somebody tell Professor Graf, what is the old Korean proverb that talks about if you sleep for 2 hours a day, you go here, you go to this school. If you sleep 3 hours a day, you go to this school. If you sleep 5 hours a day, forget it. Have you guys heard that proverb in Korea? What is that talking about?
I haven't heard it, but I've heard about student police. They are policing students that are going on, what do you call it, hagwons language schools, and sitting there until midnight, and it's not allowed anymore. So 10 o'clock, the police shows up and close the whole thing. So, but what should I say?
What I was talking about is still very different than that. Do one of you students remember that? If you sleep for 3 hours a night, you can get in the sky. If you sleep 4 hours a night, you might get into a good university. If you sleep 5 or 6 hours a night, forget it. You probably won't get into any university. Have you guys heard that before?
Yeah. Yes.
Like
Many teachers told us like that.
So
The less
what does it mean?
sleep, the less
Professor
the
Graf
students.
is talking about just sleeping. But it's not actually talking about sleeping. The point of that story is talking about what? What do you do when you're not sleeping?
Studying, of course.
Studying, yes, yeah.
Yeah, studying.
Yes.
So it's very.
Something.
I can come up with an example now. You know, we have Corona crisis, right? And you have in Korea, we have in Denmark. And so to fight the Corona, COVID-19, businesses let people work from home. And now they realize that, in fact, it's a good idea in many circumstances. And they change a lot of work assignments to let people work from home. And how can we do that? How can we know that they are working from home? Well, it's just a question of trust. You know, in your country, you control everything, but it's very bad for your motivation. You don't want it to be controlled all the time. You should be self-motivating. And so you are studying because you are interested in the field and you want to achieve something. So you work hard because you want to achieve things, not because your boss tells you to do or your parents tell you to do that. This is a new experience that people are self-motivating, and you can trust them. Trust is everything. And in fact, we know that on these hack ones, students are not studying, they're sleeping, because now they have studied for 13 hours, that is much too much. The marginal effect, the marginal learning effect of an extra hour is nil or even negative, I think.
How about, so what Professor Graf is talking about is international research shows that a good human being's development comes from sleeping 8 hours a night. And you should also do things outside of your school books. You should do other things. I would like to share, again, my culture. I'm from Canada. Everybody knows Canada is the land of ice and snow. Maybe Professor Graf might be able to say, no, that's his country. I don't know. But when I was 10 years old, my school teacher had a government requirement that we had to study one class. And that class required us to study more than 20 hours a day. That was a government requirement. Does anybody here, can you guess what was that class in Canada?
Hockey.
We just finished saying, in Korea, your mothers, your fathers, your family will encourage you, you need to study 20 hours a day if you want to get into the good schools and good companies, or maybe 22 hours if you want to get into the top. But in Canada, what was it? Was it Ha Suyong? Who was it that was just trying to comment? Yi Chadin, did you have a comment?
Yes, I said maybe hockey.
Good guess, but yes, some schools, they require you to study extracurricular activities. So a lot of schools, especially in the United States, there's almost nothing more important than being good at sports. So the whole town and the community will encourage people to play sports, and you get easy scholarships if you learn to play hockey or sports or baseball, football. Yes, but no, I'm talking about a different, this was a government required study session, not just about sports. Anybody else want to guess?
I think just spending together. Yes, I think just spending time together and like maybe get some sleep or just talk or having good relationships, like filing up the relationships with friends.
Almost everybody in Canada promotes what you just said, but the government requirements that I'm talking about was different. Maybe in Denmark it's the same thing, but probably most of you don't know about it. Somebody else had a guess. What does the government say? You must go to class and you must study this for many hours, very serious.
Oh, can I
Almost
okay.
the same as Koreans people saying you must study math Suagwan, balika. Yes, go ahead.
I think searching their dream or searching their purpose for their life is, I think, the thing they require to study.
That's a good thing. Yes, many teachers want students to focus on your future. They want you to focus on your dreams, getting your dreams. One last guess before I tell you? We're almost at the end of class.
I guess spending time in nature.
Yes, we have success. I used to live in the North Pole by the Arctic Circle, and the government required every student in elementary school, middle school, high school, you had to take a class, and it was more than 20 hours. Sometimes it would be all weekend or all week. You had to go out and live on the land, learn how to live with nature. Including, sometimes I went out in snowstorms or in hurricanes where people could freeze to death and die. We had to make igloos and live in snow holes to survive. So, yes, but most people in Canada don't know that. Most people never go to the Arctic Circle. I don't know if Denmark has that requirement, but my point is that in Canada, just studying math and science, it's nice, it's respected, but nowhere as serious as you have to in Korea. You have to think outside of books. You have to think about sports. You have to think about your future. And in many places, you have to think about nature, how to just live with nature. Yes.
So, yeah, oh, sorry. You have an
Go ahead.
extreme climate, so, sorry. Is it me or?
Yes, go ahead, Professor Graf.
Oh, okay. No, we don't have such things in Denmark because we have a temperate climate, not very different from Korea. In fact, it's nearly the same. But if you go to Greenland, so you know we are governing Greenland, this big island of ice and snow. So do you know how many, do you know Greenland, where it is located and how big it is?
I had a class school trip that took me to Greenland when I lived in the Arctic Circle.
Oh, fantastic. I haven't been there, in fact. So I think it's living 53,000 people. That's all in such a big land area. So of course, the natural climate is difficult to survive in, but today they are modernized. They have all the things you have in Denmark and in Korea. You have television, you have good houses and heated houses and so on. So today is no problem. But earlier, to survive, you had to know the nature. So that's true. But I think that if you know this,
I believe we're at the end of class. Class usually goes to 1:15. I will stay around and talk for a while. Yes, Professor Graf, he has this.
I think this one is the most important. If you learn this and adapt to this, you can never be wrong in a foreign culture. So that should be my recommendation, that you realize that that's the way you should behave.
Yes. So yes, make sure you communicate respect, tolerate ambiguity, even though the norm in Korea is you should not tolerate that. Outside, you should display empathy by understanding other people's needs, remain non-judgmental, even though your first thought may be to think, oh, that's bad, that's strange, that's not the way that which should be done. You should try to observe and just accept what is happening around you, especially with the locals. Recognize and control that your self-reliance criterion that's one of your biggest obstacles. What you think is normal and what you think is okay sometimes can be an obstacle or an issue in foreign countries. And yes, definitely learn how to laugh things off, have a good sense of humor in any culture, as long as you don't offend somebody's ideas. So yes, that's important. I see somebody has a question. Ali, you have a comment?
No, I just want to
Oh,
add.
yes. We are trying to give rewards for students that chat in class. So which was the student that actually guessed nature for Canadian studies?
Because I'm trying to record, but you guys mute the video is too fast, so I can't see you when I just typing in. So you guys leave the microphone for a while to make sure that I can see you.
Whatever student made the comment about nature, make sure you contact Ali. I'm going to just say one other thing. It's in the textbook. It's related to what we're talking about. This the research shows some of the best ways to create cultural synergy is to, again, describe the situation. You are on one side, somebody else is completely different. You need to describe the situation from your perspective and be polite, but also you should try to describe the situation from what you think the other people like, and then next, interpret the cultures. So try to determine what is the cultural assumptions. Which cultural assumption explains your perspective and your behavior, and what explains the other culture's perspective and behavior. So why would people in Canada care about those things differently? Why do people in Denmark and Canada want students to make mistakes, and try to understand that? Next, the idea of assess the cultural overlap. What part is similar? In Korea, a teacher often will beat the students if you make a mistake. But in Canada, it's the opposite. You get a reward. With me, I give you extra points. So what is an overlap? What is similar? The teacher in Korea wants you to learn and develop, and I want you to learn and develop. So understanding that, identify the cultural similarities, differences among the various cultures involved. Step 3, increase the cultural creativity. So not only do you have just 1 or 2 people, but we have a class with many people from many cultures here. So create cultural synergy and alternatives. So create a new alternative by leveraging the various cultures involved. So try to propose, normally in Korea we do A, but in Denmark you do B, but in maybe Germany we do C, or in Peru and Brazil we do E and F. So identify there's different ways, and what are some ways that all of them may overlap together. So create some sort of cultural synergy that way, and then you can select one as an alternative. Check to see whether the potential solution fits the assumptions of all cultures involved. Does country A accept this? Does country B accept this? Is country 3, are they okay, or are they insulted? So you need to check before you adopt these things. And then you can implement the cultural synergistic solution. Implementing these solutions while observing each culture's reaction. Redefine the solution based on multicultural feedback. So we've gone through, we've seen Korean style is students shouldn't say something because they might get beaten if it's a mistake, even though in Germany or in Europe or in Denmark or in Canada, it's good to do that. Elon Musk will hire you if you can take many chances at that thing. So that's great. We've reviewed many of these things. I'm just going to get back to the idea of our class. We've talked for maybe 10 minutes more than class. Is there anybody that has any last questions or comments for Professor Graf or Ali or myself or each other?
Can I make a comment?
No, be quiet.
Okay.
I'm joking, of course, yes. I'm waiting for you.
You said you went to nature for 20 hours, right? And I think that is a little bit very rare case in Korea, especially in high school, because even in the elementary or kindergarten, sometimes usually go to nature for our picnic. But in high school, when we go or when we teachers say to the students or another teacher like that we are going to go to nature to find some cultures, but then when he say like that, the another teacher seems see the teacher like very weird and think like why he do that like that, because the in high school study is the most important. So I think it's not much time to get in touch with nature. So I think that culture is very nice.
It's different. Whether it's nice or not, the cultures are not good or bad. It's just different. So hopefully you appreciate these differences going forward. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Any other comments?
Yeah. Well, I think if I should make a final comment, that if we think about business negotiations, then please remember that in international business, the seller is expected to adapt to the buyer. So, and the synergy you can make in class because you are together for a whole semester and several semesters. So that makes sense. But if you're in a business context, and if you are doing the best for getting the contract, getting the deal, is very important, and not to come up with some things that the buyer don't like. So let me give an example. In Germany, they have a very steep hierarchy also. So in Germany, you address a person with Herr Schmidt and Herr Dr. Schmidt, Herr Professor something. In Denmark, we will just use the surname or the front name, but not so in Germany. You have to be aware of this before you initiate negotiations.
It definitely helps to understand the other person's background, their values and stuff. Absolutely. So thank you very much for joining our class today, Professor Graf. I hope away with me yelling at some of the students. I hope that we can hear from you much more often. I wanted to remind the students that Professor Graf, he is aware that students are doing research projects, and almost everybody has to do a research project talking about different cultures. And as you can see in this screen I'm showing, the Danish culture and the Korean culture are almost opposites. So for almost any of your papers, interviewing Professor Graf or commenting, asking him questions or talking with him would probably definitely help your paper. I hope you can learn from him and help me convince the dean and chair, Julia Park, to hire him, and he might be able to come give courses this winter and interact with us much more often. Any last questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, students.
Thanks to you, Dr. Watts, and all students. Bye-bye.
As always, I will stick around for a while if you guys do have other questions. Anybody have a project or weekly presentation or question or comment? Hurry up. Talk to Professor Graf before he's gone. He's going to disappear soon, so.
Yeah.
Ask him lots of questions while you can.
Should I ask questions? No. No, okay. Okay, maybe I should just leave and then let you be private for. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you
Okay.
today.
Thank you very much,
Everybody.
Professor Graff.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
I hope after class you guys can go to the student contributions and see your contributions. That is today I might without some point.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Yes.
you.
Bye.
See you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Dr. Watts, I have a
Thank
question.
you.
Go ahead, Miss Lee.
So it's about the proposal that we have to give on, I believe it's October 7th. So on October 7th, we're supposed to give a presentation regarding our proposal. Is that right?
October 7th. Yes, everybody is supposed to start showing your findings. What have you found for your research project? What articles have you found? What do you plan to do during the breaks, for example? Usually students will go survey people in the company. Some students will have already started and they have an outline for a paper, but they will be upgrading it and adding more details later. So yes, you should present your term project and talk about what articles you found, several different articles. You should share that. You do not have to have a paper finished, but you need to have started something. And just, I want students to realize you get benefit by trying. You can't make a mistake. There's nothing wrong about doing this. Does that answer your question?
So we do not have to like submit a document form, like a Word document form of proposal, but rather just present what we have and what we are in the process of research.
Right.
Yes and no. You need to talk in class or show the class what you have so far. For example, if you have a folder, a Google Drive folder of many articles, show that. Maybe you can open one that is most interesting to you and tell the class why this one's most interesting. Maybe tell the class, it's so interesting, I'm going to copy most of this style and format and just change it for Korea and change it for the companies that I'm focused on. That's what I'm looking for. I already showed you an example of a student paper where the student replicated an existing article before. I can show you another example. Some students have already shared this. You guys can see this. Students have shared background of culture, what culture is, Max Weber, what is Confucianism, and they went through, and what was best about this is they found a journal article and they shared what they think is interesting in the journal article, and there's a reference to it. I want you to do the same type of thing. And then here's another reference to a journal article, and here's another reference to a journal article. This is a different journal article, and there's another reference to something else, maybe a Wikipedia or a TED talk or a YouTube video. But what I love most is that this student has found this journal article and showed the class, this is really interesting. I'm going to use that in my paper. Here's another article here, and this is really interesting. Here's another article, this is really interesting. Another article, this is interesting. And then at the end, they talk about how they're doing interviews. That is how you make your term paper. So presenting something like this is great, but make sure you show everybody your references. Where did you get the information from? And make sure you have your website clear so other people can click on their website and open and review that file or download the file for them to use. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so if we prepare our PowerPoint, then we can just upload it on the Excel file or Facebook group, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
And as soon as class starts on that day, or even before, you are asking questions that show Korean value. So you assume you have to do it only on that day. But the actual instructions that the Canadian professor gave you is that is the deadline. So I actually said, do it by then or before. So you could actually do it right now or next class. Don't wait until a Korean professor says, do it now, Lee Sung-hak, or Kim Min-jae, or Ali. You know, don't wait for me to push you. That's Korean. Try to propose your own solution. Try to propose your own contribution. Try to get me to tell you to be quiet or shut up or something. Try to make a mistake. You may get extra awards for it because it will help in other countries. Ha Xiang, did I see that you had a question or comment also?
No.
Damn. Oh, Eugene, did I see that your eyes are very bright? Do you have a question or comment for me? Damn, somebody. Kim Min-jae, what about you? You love to talk. I know you love to talk in class. I guess you probably might be comfortable sharing an article that you found or a video that you found, and you can just simply link that in the Facebook group or in the Excel file. And all you need to do in class is just say, excuse me, professor, please look at that. Or here's the link, and share the link in our next chat group. Hongmin?
Yes.
Not yes, just start talking, start contributing. The Korean thing is, yes, 교수님, 도와드릴게요. No, that's not what I want. 잘 부탁드립니다. No, I don't want you to help me. I just want you to try. Practice talking, practice sharing. Go crazy in class.
Professor,
Yes, Ms. Ha.
so the materials like video or link, those can be just related to the course, not just specific chapter?
Well, I think you're an awesome student, and I'd love to see videos of your family birthday parties and your dog and stuff, but no, I hope that you're going to talk about something related to class. Yes.
Okay.
The biggest thing that we're looking for October 7 is show me your term paper, because that's worth basically 60 marks, right? And as soon as you show it to me, I can help you develop it even more. What I'm doing is the opposite of in Korea. In Korea, they just said, this is the project, do it. The deadline is the last week of December. That's not the Canadian way. I want you guys to work together, work with me, work with Professor Gars. Maybe I can introduce you to people to survey or contact or interview. Can I get some comments? What do you think of the professor from Denmark? Did he help make the class interesting today?
Yes.
Yes.
How many people think he looks like Santa Claus?
Professor,
Yes,
can I have a question?
you sure can. You
Yes,
just did.
it's about final project. I saw like we must have a video. Can I ask about what kind of video? Like we filming ourselves or do something?
Yes, read the Excel file and you will see those details. So inside this Excel file, if you go over to the back, you'll see in the frequently asked questions details.
Yes.
I believe, where are they here? Here are many examples. So this is the one example of a student video, and here is another example. There's
Yes, I
two
got it.
videos, and my computer thinks they both suck so bad, my computer's not going to show them to you. Joking. These are both great videos. This is what you should strive for, but the minimum requirement is you just hold up your phone and you press video record for what you're going to talk about. That's the minimum. If you want to
Oh,
put in
yes.
graphics, if you want to put in animation, that's extra good.
Mm. Yes, I got it.
Any other comments? Anything else I can help you guys with?
Thank you, Professor, for today. See you
Okay.
next class.
Yes. Bye. Have a good day. I missed you in class today, Miss Wynn. Hopefully we
Yes.
can see you more often in class.
No, I have a lot like information about like Korean hierarchy, and yes, it's good. And Professor Crab is very interesting. I hope that we can have more class like this. Yes.
Okay. I'm just going for it's interesting. I'm simply showing you one of the best student videos I've seen so far.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let me start. This is an example of a student video. So you see these details.
Yes.
Hopefully you guys can still hear me.
Yes. I still hear you. Oh, sorry, Professor. Sorry, Professor. Your mic have some problem. I cannot hear you clearly. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, now you can hear me.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
I was just showing that the idea is most marks come from the, let me just turn the mic, yeah, the mic should be off. So most marks come, 35 marks come from your writing a paper. And
Yes.
most of those marks come from showing you are referencing good information. So you need to find good Scopus journal articles, reference that, share that. Whatever you
Yes.
share October 7, other students can use that. And if you pay attention in class, you will see other students have already started sharing a lot of these details.
Yes.
Oh, Professor.
That's it. Yes.
I think I checked the Google contribution in the Google Drive, and I think I found that the one answer I commented last week wasn't written in the Google contribution.
Okay. please contact Ali and tell her that. She will give you those marks and make sure that's clear. Thank you for saying that. Another student today, I don't know, was it you or another student, was guessing about Canadian classes focus on nature. Some students should get points for just talking about that, but they didn't say their name very clearly, so we couldn't record marks for that student yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye, see you next class.